And we are going to answer all of your questions. So please type your questions on the Q&A chat box. And don't forget to follow us on social media, so you're going to be able to see what's going to be our next activities. And please subscribe to our YouTube channel. All of these sessions are broadcast live on YouTube, and they are going to be available there. So you can see them again, and you can send the link to your colleagues that for sure will benefit from these talks as well. So as I said, we are starting a brand new series from Dr. Anderson, and we are very happy to have some special guests to bring the clinical aspect of all of these. And this month, we are going to start a new series. It's going to be a fetal cardiology series. We are going to start with some new topics, and during this year, we are going to have around one meet every month. So we are going to discuss more fetal cardiology. And we are preparing a lot of nice things for you guys. We are going to have Dr. Norman Silverman series again. We are going to have Gil Vernovsky. He's going to continue. Dr. Mary Cohen, and we are going to have a cat lab series as well. We are going to have a series on the adults with congenital heart disease. So we are preparing a lot of things for you, and we are preparing the big webinars as well. So just keep an eye on our social media, so we are going to be posted what is going on. And now with you, Dr. Anderson.
Well, thank you very much for that introduction, Grace, and welcome to all our viewers, all our listeners for 2021. The virus is still around. Many of you will be aware that in the United Kingdom, we've just been hit by the second wave of the virus that is appreciably worse than the first. Our hospitals rather, are close to being totally full. I was very fortunate this morning. I've just had the Pfizer vaccine, so I feel much more comfortable myself. And I know that Sasha has also been vaccinated. Norman tells me he is due to be vaccinated anytime. So there is light at the end of the tunnel. But there's no question that over the next few weeks, or even the next few months, we're going to have to continue our activities in the Congenital Heart Academy. So as Grace has intimated, we're changing the anatomic format a little bit this year. And I'm very pleased that I'm going to be joined by very good friends and colleagues, including Grace, and we're going to try and bring you the clinical correlates of some of the anatomic features of the congenitally malformed heart. So today I'm going to start off with my very good friend and colleague, Saurabh Gupta. You'll be seeing Saurabh very shortly. We're going to be starting off by discussing a contentious entity, the artery of the fifth pharyngeal arch. So I'm going to share my screen with you now, and we're going to look at the alleged artery of the fifth pharyngeal arch. Now, you will all be well aware, I hope, if you go into the literature, you'll find there are many lesions or many cases that have been interpreted on the basis of persistence of this enigmatic artery of the fifth pharyngeal arch. Saurabh is going to take you through the history of these descriptions, and he will be telling you that the first entity that was defined and interpreted on this basis was the double-barreled aorta. He'll then share with you the multiple cases of unusual systemic to pulmonary arterial connections that have been interpreted on the basis of an artery of the fifth pharyngeal arch. But today we're going to pose the question as to whether any of these descriptions are justified. And Saurabh is going to tell you that in the past I have been a very enthusiastic supporter of the alleged artery of the fifth arch. But what we're all going to share with you is recent work that has been done in terms of cardiac development. Now, those of you who were with us for the larger part of last year will know that I've been sharing with you the work we've been doing recently regarding cardiac development. And I've already discussed with you the remodeling of the arteries of the pharyngeal arches. So I'm going to go through that again with you today, and I'm going to concentrate on the presence or absence of the fifth pharyngeal arch. So what has been the evidence that has been adduced allegedly to support the existence of this fifth pharyngeal arch? Well, for a long time now, there have been suggestions that there is formation of this entity as a vestigial structure that eventually disappears. And for a large part, this evidence that during development you can see 6 arches, but one goes away very quickly, is based also on the knowledge that in comparative anatomy, mammals have 6 pharyngeal arches and 6 pharyngeal arch arteries. But in reality, there is no justification for either of these presumptions. And last year, or rather the year before last, I'm a year ahead of myself now, the year before last in 2019 in the Journal of Anatomy, Anthony Graham, an excellent British anatomist, embryologist, published this article in the Journal of Anatomy. And Anthony showed conclusively that there is no evidence either from development or from comparative anatomy to support the existence of a fifth pharyngeal arch. And as you know, I have been studying in detail what's been going on in developing mouse embryos, in developing human embryos, and I can tell you that our own investigations now totally support the conclusions made by Anthony and his colleagues. So I no longer believe in the existence of a vestigial fifth pharyngeal arch. If I no longer believe in the existence of the arch itself, obviously, I can't believe in the existence of a fifth arch artery. So let me share with you my own investigations concerning the development of the pharyngeal arches. So what are the pharyngeal arches? They are blocks of what we call pharyngeal mesenchyme. They're separated by pharyngeal pouches, outpouchings of the developing gut that reach nearly almost to the ectodermal surface of the developing embryo. And in each of the arches, we do find an artery, but each arch also has endodermal elements, it has cartilaginous elements, and it has one of the cranial nerves accompanying it. So let me show you what we find in the developing mouse. And all of these exquisite reconstructions I'm showing you have been made by Simon Bamforth. Simon is a senior lecturer in the University of Newcastle. He and I have been working together now for quite some time, and Simon is a wizard at manipulating these 3-dimensional data sets that have been prepared by Tim Mohan. So here I'm showing you a picture of the developing mouse embryo. You're looking at it from the left side. You see the head developing to your right hand. You see the curve of the back going along the bottom of the image, and the tail of the mouse is on the top left-hand corner of the image. So there is the developing heart tube. It's in the neck of the embryo when we first see it. And you can see there the block of pharyngeal mesenchyme that I'm talking about, and running through it, Simon has reconstructed the first arch artery. And then behind it, you see the first pharyngeal pouch. And behind that, you see forming a second arch, and the arch itself is occupied by that second arch artery. Now, this is a developing mouse at embryonic day 9.5, so halfway through the 10th day of development. The mouse at this stage has 15 somites. And at this stage, the arch arteries, which emanate from the aortic sac, are bilaterally symmetrical. I'm only going to be showing you the left side today, and they join together in the dorsal aorta. So here we go on in the 10th day of development. Now we're towards the end of the 10th day of development. The mouse has developed several more somites, and already we can see these changes that take place during remodeling of the pharyngeal arches. Again, you're looking at it from the left side. This time we've closed in on the developing neck embryo. So you see to the top of the screen the developing heart tube. And you see now that the artery that just a few somites ago was a huge structure is now attenuating. It is still within the block of mesenchyme that is the first pharyngeal arch. The second arch artery now has unified with the dorsal aorta, and behind it we have the formation of the second pharyngeal pouch. But now you see we have formation of a third arch, and it has its own artery. We go on one day, now we're into the 11th day of development. It's early in the 11th day of development. The mouse now has developed 32 somites. We're looking at it in the same way. Now the heart tube is also developed, so now you see the developing atrium. But you see the first arch artery is attenuating. The second arch artery is attenuating. They are still within their blocks of mesenchyme, but we can call pharyngeal arches. But now we see the second pouch behind the second arch. We see that the third arch artery has become dominant. There is the third pouch. And now an artery is developing in yet another block of mesenchyme, which we can identify as the fourth pharyngeal arch. And there is the fourth pouch behind it. We go on in the 11th day of development. The mouse has developed that number more somites. And now we don't see the first arch artery at all. We still see the remnants of the second arch. There is the second pouch. And now we have third arch, third pouch, fourth arch, fourth pouch. And now we see the development of what will be the last arch with its artery. And I'm going to call this the pulmonary arch, because we know that the pulmonary arteries will take their origin through these major arteries that are percolating through this block of pharyngeal mesenchyme. But note, there is no pouch behind this block of mesenchyme. It does have a nerve. The vagus nerve is associated with this block of mesenchyme, but it doesn't have a cartilaginous element, and nothing is formed from the endoderm. So it is not a true pharyngeal arch in the sense that the first, second, third, and fourth arches are. But there is one other key point that we discovered when we looked at a lot of mouse embryos at this stage. So here I've closed up. I'm still working with reconstructions made by Simon. So you're looking at it from the left side again. So you see the left fourth arch artery, and now what I'm calling the pulmonary arch artery. And there, between the two, is a collateral channel. And it is collateral channels along that with remolding that I'm going to be emphasizing as we talk about remodeling of the pharyngeal arch arteries. So if I summarize what's going on in the mouse, as Anthony Graham suggested and showed, we only find 5 pharyngeal arch arteries. But in half mouse embryos, we do find collateral channels between the terminations of the fourth and the pulmonary arch arteries. You'd be justified in saying, okay, you've told me about mice, but what's going on in humans? Because it's in humans that we describe persistence of the fifth pharyngeal arch artery. So you will remember, and I shared with you during last year, these wonderful interactive PDFs that have been prepared by Professor Wout Lammers and Dr. Jill Hicks-Boers, who work in the University of Maastricht. We are hoping that these PDFs will soon be available for you to interrogate yourselves, because we've now submitted the article in which we describe development from Carnegie stage 9 through to Carnegie stage 23. And that is currently under review. We hope it will be accepted, and we hope you will all have access to these interactive PDFs. So I've selected images from the PDFs that you can view in comparison to what you have just been seeing in the developing mouse heart. And you see we're going to start off at Carnegie stage 12. And at this stage, the human embryo itself has been developing for 30 days. In brown, you see the heart within its pericardial cavity. And emerging from the pericardial cavity into the pharyngeal mesenchyme, as you know, we have the aortic sac. So we're at the stage here where the first arch artery develops from the aortic sac, and as in the mouse, there is a pouch behind it. At this stage, already the second arch artery has developed, and it too has a pouch behind it. So let's move on in the human as we did in the mouse. So here we are, Carnegie stage 12. I take you forward one stage, Carnegie stage 13, another 2 days during human development, and there have been quite remarkable changes in what's been happening with pharyngeal arches. Because now neither the first pharyngeal arch nor the second pharyngeal arch retain their arteries. So now we do see vessels emanating from the aortic sac. They're bilaterally symmetrical, as they are in the developing mouse. Remember, we're looking at it from the left side. So there you see the left third arch artery with its pouch, the left fourth arch artery with its pouch, and already, very rapid in the human, we have development of the pulmonary arch artery. And again, as in the mouse, there is no pouch behind it. Now, not a lot has happened as we move on to the next stage of human development, Carnegie stage 14, 34 days, nearly 5 weeks have happened since conception. So we see a very similar picture that I showed you in the previous image. The first pouch, second pouch, the arches associated with these pouches have lost their arteries, but emanating from the aortic sac, we see the third arch artery with its pouch, fourth arch artery with its pouch, pulmonary arch artery with no pouch. We can then see what happens as this remodels. So I'm going to take you on quite a bit of development, and I'm going to show you what's happening at Carnegie stage 17. Here we are nearly at 6 weeks of development, 40 days have passed since conception, and we're getting very close now to the definitive situation. Remember, we're looking at it from the left side. So emanating from the left horn of the aortic sac now, we have the third arch artery. And the third arch artery will become the left common carotid artery. This is the transverse segment of the aortic arch, and it is the fourth arch artery. And together with the pulmonary arch artery, the two are unifying to form what will be the descending aorta. And those of you who were with us last year will remember that at this stage, coming up the dorsal aorta is the seventh cervical intersegmental artery. And that, of course, is going to be the subclavian artery. In fact, as we discussed, it's the heart that's moving towards the tail end of the embryo, but the seventh cervical intersegmental artery will cross over the descending aorta, will castle the unification with the pulmonary arch artery, and will, of course, become the left subclavian artery. But as you can see in this image, it is at this stage bilaterally symmetrical. But there is no fifth arch. Now, Saurabh is going to tell you that at one stage I did believe we had discovered a vestigial fifth arch artery. Saurabh will be discussing this with you. Again, it's an exquisite reconstruction made by Simon Bamforth, but this time it is from a human embryo. We're looking at it from the left side again. So you see the left horn of the aortic sac giving rise to the left third arch, the left fourth arch artery. And there is the left pulmonary arch artery. And in this one human embryo on the left side, we thought we had found a true fifth arch artery. But now we've gone back and we've reconsidered this, and I'm now showing you the same thing orientated as I've shown you the previous images. So there, the left fourth arch artery, there, the left pulmonary arch artery, and what you see is that an additional channel is percolating through the segment of pharyngeal mesenchyme that also encloses the left pulmonary arch artery. There is no pouch between that attenuating channel and the left pulmonary arch artery. There is a fourth pouch, but there is no fifth pouch. So now we believe that this is no more than another collateral channel. So Saurabh is going to take you through the story that led us to believe we could identify fifth arch arteries. Here you see our definition. He'll give you a much better indication of that. But at this stage, when I ask the question to myself, is there a fifth arch artery? I have to tell you, there is no evidence to support either the existence of a fifth arch, and hence there cannot be a fifth arch artery. And now I do believe we can find much better explanations for all of those lesions, if you go into the literature, have been defined as fifth arch arteries. And as Saurabh will explain, we believe the better explanations are either the persistence of collateral channels, they provide a perfect explanation for the double-barreled aorta, or else remodeling of the aortic sac and the arterial duct. So that is my introduction. I'm now going to stop my sharing. I'm going to hand you over to Saurabh, and Saurabh is going to give you the clinical implications of what we are discussing today. Is there a fifth arch artery? So Saurabh, over to you.
Thanks so much, sir. Hello, everyone. So once the stage is set for me to share the story, as Professor Anderson told, I'll not take much time and straight away go to the presentation. And at the outset, I'll thank Congenital Heart Academy to take over such academic activities for the benefit of everyone across the globe. So I think the title says The Fifth Arch, a case of mistaken identity, and I'll tell you why we say that. And then this story unfolded over 3 or 4 years, and I'll give you the timelines. So this was somewhere in August 2012 when I encountered one patient during cardiac catheterization that there is a double lumen aorta, or what we call as double barrel aorta. And as you can see in this lateral view angiogram, that these two lumens are one above the other. And on the AP projection, they are lying on one side of the trachea. So that suggested that this is typical double barrel aorta. After a few weeks, I encountered another patient who had a vessel which was coming very proximally, and it was even proximal to the brachiocephalic artery. And this was in a patient who had a TAW physiology. This patient underwent cardiac catheterization, and this was actually a vessel which was supplying the left pulmonary artery. As you can see over here, if you put this vessel seems to arise proximal to this brachiocephalic artery. At least that's what I thought at that time. And almost at the same time, this publication appeared in JACC Cardiovascular Imaging, which showed that they identified a prenatal fifth arch, whereby there was a communication between ascending aorta proximal to the brachiocephalic artery and to the confluence of the pulmonary artery. And they labeled it as fifth arch. And I thought that it seems like a good idea for both the cases which I just showed you. So after a few weeks of literature review, which led me to this article, which first time in 1969 proposed that a double lumen extends from the level of innominate artery proximally to the level of left subclavian artery and ductus arteriosus distally. And according to the authors, Dr. Van Praag, it says that from the developmental standpoint, this anomaly appears clearly to indicate that a fifth arterial artery arch can occur in men, thereby resolving a long-standing embryologic dispute. And this is what they had. This is the lower lumen and this is the upper lumen. And this was another paper which Dr. Anderson was one of the co-authors. This described these cases, and they concluded that the power of mimicry of this enigmatic structure may account for its apparent rarity. And I think these two papers led many of the clinicians around the world to believe that there are many cases of fifth arch artery which are being underdiagnosed, and more people got fascinated about it. I personally felt that this classification, which was proposed by Dr. Freedom, nailed the diagnosis of fifth arch, and he classified it into systemic to systemic, double barrel aorta, or systemic to pulmonary, as I showed in the other case, and a few cases of pulmonary to systemic, and even they talked about bilateral. And now today we are discussing whether it exists on even on one side. So that is how science progresses possibly. So we followed suit after reviewing all those papers, and we also published these two cases. And this was the CT of the double barrel aorta, and this was the CT of this channel which was connecting to the left pulmonary artery. Now, again, in early 2013, I did an angiogram where there was aberrant left subclavian artery in the right aortic arch, and the carotid artery was arising very proximally. And I thought it also may be a fifth arch. And it was based on this paper, which said that if a vessel is arising too proximal to the aortic cannulus, this may actually be a fifth arch. And this paper appeared somewhere in 2006. And I thought that, oh, it's good that I've picked another fifth arch. And this was not the only paper. There were further communication regarding this, and even subclavian, which was arising from ascending aorta, was suggested to be a variant of persistent fifth arch. So it looked quite interesting to me, and fifth arch almost captured my imagination. So I spent more time on this. So I wrote an email to Professor Anderson, and I said that the third case, which was described in the paper by Gurlis et al., I am not able to understand how it should not be labeled as a distal AP window, why we should be labeling it as fifth arch. And the response I got was, it's very difficult, but now we know that fifth artery does exist. And this was the paper he shared with me. And he had just shared how they could identify one candidate fifth arch in a human embryo. So I was on cloud 5, so to say, that there actually exists a fifth arch, and I'm seeing more and more cases. So it seems like a good idea to chase this. It appeared so logical to publish, and I even made these figures to say how this would be a fifth arch if you have to explain this proximal origin of carotid artery from ascending aorta. The reviewer said the cobbler should stick to their last, and later I came to know that the reviewer was Professor Anderson. So this was the subsequent email communication with him, when he wrote, unless the anomalous vessel was terminating in the descending aorta, how could it possibly be a fifth arch? And the response I gave was, if it is actually so, then how to explain these aortopulmonary connections which are arising from ascending aorta? And these arguments actually led us to further go into the details of it, and we decided to dig it deeper. So the story of fifth arch starts long back, and this paper, which was in 1910, talks about fifth arch, and this was a wax plated embryo model where they could show a fifth arch in a pig embryo. This is the publication in 1949 in Nature, which says bilateral fifth arch in frog, and I think these are the ones which led Professor Van Praag to believe that possibly it exists in the human embryo as well. So again, coming back to this paper. So as I showed you, this is double barreled aorta, but then there is a PDA also, which is lying distal to this inferior lumen. So coming to this double barrel aorta, there were multiple publications in 1973 till 1990, where you can see here, this so-called duct is proximally attached to the ascending aorta and distally below this inferior lumen. This is another demonstration where the duct is lying distal to this. This one is another one, and there will many more like this. And this is a list of papers which described double-barreled aorta with or without patent arterial duct, or with or without coarctation. But we struggle to understand whether the duct should lie here or whether the duct should lie here. As we saw this another case, and this case also, initially I thought maybe a fifth arch, but as you can see over here, this patient is actually having double lumen. This is the upper lumen, this is the lower lumen, and this is the arterial duct. Now, if it is a fifth arch, then how arterial duct is attaching over here? So that again led us to believe that there is something wrong going on, and it should not be a fifth arch. Now, coming to the second one, aortic to pulmonary communication. These were the multiple publications which led others to believe that this kind of communication, wherever it is coming from the ascending aorta and joining the confluence of the pulmonary artery, or in some cases of pulmonary atresia, this was one of the channels which was supplying to some of the lung segments. Now, these were again the papers which were quoted as fifth arch, and they were supplying from aorta to different parts of the pulmonary artery. In some cases, it was to the confluence. In other cases, it was directly to the left pulmonary artery. In some cases, the authors themselves claimed that they mimic distal AP window, but they decided to label it as fifth arch. Now, the questions we asked to ourselves was, is this the fifth arch or distal AP window? If you see this echo, Dr. Silverman will agree with me that this looks like a AP window. There is no confusion at all. And something similar would be seen if we see this case, which was published in 2012. Now, some of the authors went ahead till this time in till 2000. All the anomalies which were described at persistent fifth arch were in association with some other cardiac anomalies. But then in 2000, this paper started saying that even isolated aortopulmonary communication can be because of persistent fifth arch. Now, this figure is taken from Professor Anderson, and initially it was thought that this may be a distal AP window. Later it was thought that this may be a fifth arch. Possibly, if there is extrapericardial, someone can label it as fifth arch, or if it is intrapericardial, it can be labeled as distal AP window, and that's what we thought. Now, can this be a fifth arch? This was another publication in 2007 by McCartney, where the vessel was arising from base of the brachiocephalic and it was coming to the confluence of pulmonary arteries. And this is one of our own case, which had almost similar appearance. And we thought that since it is communicating to the confluence of the pulmonary artery, it may still be a candidate for fifth arch. Is this also a fifth arch? In this particular case, in an adult with pulmonary atresia, a vessel is arising very close to the brachiocephalic artery, and it takes its tortuous course and enters directly into the left pulmonary artery. So we took clues from Congdon's publication, which was in 1922, which says that if it is established that these vessels are true fifth arches, the usual termination would indicate strongly that the upper end of the pulmonary arch is the homologue of the distal portion of the fifth. So we meant by this, if the fifth arch is existing, then it should be terminating through a part of the sixth arch. And therefore, if any vessel is having a tortuous course and is terminating into part of the pulmonary arteries, we thought that this justifies a label of persistent fifth arch. But some authors took it too far. They even labeled isolated left pulmonary artery as a persistent fifth arch, which we know is not right. Some even said that there can be bilateral persistent fifth aortic arch, and they said that this is the channel which supplies ascending aorta to left pulmonary artery, and then there is another communication causing double barrel aorta, as you can see in this angiogram. So suggesting that there is bilateral persistent fifth arch, which we didn't feel that should be considered as fifth arch. Now, this paper again published in 2004. Here, the patient had double barrel aorta as well as a left pulmonary artery almost arising from the ascending aorta. Although authors did not claim, but if we explain it using the previous arguments, then this would require a dual fifth arch on the same side, which of course should not happen. Now coming to the third group, abnormal origin of brachiocephalic arteries, as the third case which I shared with you. Now these are 25 different patterns of anatomic variation in brachiocephalic arteries. This was published in 1975. And this is another paper which describes 8 most common anatomic variations out of 633 CT angiograms. Some people have even cautioned against the use of the term bovine arch, which is very frequently used in clinical scenario, where if there is a common origin of brachiocephalic and left common carotid artery, we tend to say it as bovine arch, while it has no comparison with the true bovine arch, where it has only a single vessel which gives rise to all the neck vessels. So this is the most common, most important misnomer we should be avoiding in all cases wherever we are talking about brachiocephalic artery. But it seems that it doesn't matter to people who believe in fifth arch, including me in my earlier phase of my career. And these are the papers which describes these various bovine arches, pseudo-bovine arches, with coarctation, without coarctation, or without patent arterial duct. And as I mentioned, some of the cases where left subclavian artery or carotid artery coming as the first branch were explained on the basis of fifth arch. And these were some of the examples. People even claimed that this is fifth arch because this vessel which was supposed to be here is absent, and that is why it should be labeled as fifth arch. And this paper I have already showed you why this was labeled as fifth arch, and possibly why it should not be considered now, as Professor Anderson has just told. Now coming to some of the unusual systemic pulmonary connections, almost everything which was not explainable was blamed to fifth arch, so to say. And as you can see over here, this is the cartoon redrawn from this paper by Dr. Lim. And as you can see over here, they labeled this vessel as the fifth arch. But what we are trying to say is this is just common arterial trunk with interruption. And this is the arterial duct which supplies the descending thoracic aorta. And we don't feel that there is anything wrong about that. Now, this is the first case of paper by Gurlis. And here they described aortic atresia with hypoplastic ascending aorta. And they claimed this vessel as fifth arch, while we say that this is possibly a right-sided arterial duct which is coming from the base of brachiocephalic artery in the setting of hypoplastic ascending aorta and atretic aortic root. Now, there are some other examples which are too weird to explain by any fundamentals of development, and we thought that we can't even explain them, so we just left those cases. Now, coming back to the first thing which was emphasized by Professor Van Praag was that the vessel should be proximal to brachiocephalic artery. But we felt that claiming proximal is also not easy. Now, is this vessel proximal to brachiocephalic artery? Is very difficult, especially just on angiogram. If we compare the CT, angiogram, and echo of our second case, which I showed you in the beginning, as you would realize, this CT is showing it's almost distal to the brachiocephalic artery. Here it seems, again, maybe at the same level, while echo shows that it is maybe proximal from this compared to this brachiocephalic artery. And possibly this is the problem of imaging, and that is why defining this proximal origin is again a problem, and we can't be conclusive about it. Now, this is another case which I have already shown. Here it seems that it is slightly distal. Again, this also seems that there is slightly distal, but once you see from inside, you would realize that this vessel actually arises proximal to this brachiocephalic artery, and actually it justifies the label of proximal origin. And if there is a fifth arch, possibly these are the ones which may be labeled. That's what was our thought in the beginning. So almost a year later, we compiled all these arguments and counter arguments, and we concluded that although our interpretations are speculative, we feel that a lot of alternative explanations can be advanced, And we concluded that to qualify as the fifth arch artery, any channel must arise from the ascending aorta proximal to the brachiocephalic artery, take a serpentine course, terminate in the dorsal aorta, or through the sixth arch into the pulmonary artery or arteries. Double barrel aorta, systemic to pulmonary connections, and abnormalities of brachiocephalic arteries are possibly having better alternative explanations, should not be labeled to fifth arch, while systemic to pulmonary, aortopulmonary connections may still be considered candidate fifth arch if they qualify these prerequisites. Now, based on this, we further said that these are the possibly reported examples which would qualify for true fifth arch. And this was another case where there is unequivocal proximal origin of the channel, and it goes and supplies the confluence of the pulmonary artery. And we thought that if there is a fifth arch, this would be the fifth arch. But while we were trying to say that fifth arch is not so common, others were getting it more and more, and it appeared that the fifth arch is getting popular. And if you see the PubMed publications on fifth arch, there are a total of 315 publications from 1962 to 2020. And of late, there is a surge in these publications. We felt that it's more like emperor's new cloth. And as late as 2017, we found papers labeling this double barrel aorta as fifth arch. The label of great pretender, which was tied to fifth arch by the paper in 1987 by Gerlis et al., still stays with fifth arch. And we wrote an editorial saying that it is possibly a case of mistaken identity, and we should be revising our thoughts in terms of fifth arch. Now, we asked this question in another letter to editor, where we wrote, if fifth arch arteries are so common, then why do developmental biologists are not seeing it, or they are seeing it so infrequently that there is hardly an example of a human embryo showing a fifth arch? After decades of speculation, and I think we are very happy that Dr. Graham has given this conclusive paper, whereby he has shown that there are only 5 arches and actually fifth doesn't exist, although he has suggested that the sixth arch should be relabeled as number 5, but we feel that that will create a lot of confusion, and therefore it is best to continue labeling first, second, third, and fourth as the same, and the sixth arch as the pulmonary arch, and leaving the fifth behind us till the time we have any other impressive evidence to suggest that the fifth arch exists. So to conclude, fifth arch in humans has been debated for over 100 years. Most candidate lesions have alternative explanations which can better explain the condition. There is no proof of fifth arch in human beings. Pulmonary arch is better term to be used than the sixth arch to avoid any confusion, and clinicians should follow the evidence rather than just following their own whims and fancies while labeling these lesions. Thank you so much.
Very, very nice talk. Dr. Anderson, do you want to comment on that?
I think, as you say, I think Saurabh has summarized the evidence exquisitely. I think his account of the pathway we've been through, we were both firm believers, then we reviewed the evidence, and I think he's told the story beautifully. Norman, do you want to make any comments? You're muted, Norm. You have to unmute.
Thank you. I think that I would endorse Grace's description of a most amazing and illuminating session. My own experience has been somewhat limited to a few cases, and I think that the only point that I would make still is that this is a rare anomaly which interests everybody, and because of its rarity, it seems to get more publications than would justify from the number of cases. But I think it does. I have to congratulate Dr. Gupta on his intrepid discovery of all of these clinical papers it seems he's probably read all 315 of these papers, including one of mine, which he quoted. So I thank him for that. But I think that there's almost nothing that can be said about this, except that to say that when people talk about fifth arch, as we've done in the past, we call it a double-barreled aorta. The only point that I would emphasize is that to think of this also as being associated with coarctation of the aorta, and it's a fifth arch. And that's another place that one should be looking for a double-barreled aorta. I have nothing else to say. It was absolutely illuminating discussion. Thank you very much, Dr. Gupta. It's nice to have met you this way.
Thank
Great.
you. So if I can just clarify there, sir, regarding this coarctation, as we thought that since this fifth arch, or now we say it as collateral channel, it enters through the arterial duct. So there is ductal tissue. And one of the reasons why coarctation develops is the ductal tissue involvement. So I think that explains why these lesions may be having coarctation.
There's
Right.
one comment, Saurabh, on the chat box that I found interesting. Omar is asking you, so we can say that all of your cases were aortopulmonary windows. So how do you classify, now that you are looking again to all the cases that you thought that were fifth arch, how would you classify them?
So as I mentioned, and as we wrote in our paper also, that if we could differentiate whether it is extrapericardial or intrapericardial, we could have made that a judgment. But unfortunately, none of the papers, even from the surgical side, have emphasized on that fact. And there is no description whether these lesions were intrapericardial or extrapericardial. So I think it is best to believe that they are all distal AP windows, and the ones which are having communication with the confluence, they are possibly remodeled arterial duct rather than the fifth arch.
Can I also make a comment there? Because one of the things that I've discovered in the work I've been doing with the developing heart is it is so important to say whether something is intrapericardial or extrapericardial. It's very surprising. I'm guilty of it myself. And throughout my career, I've tended to receive hearts after the autopsy. I do not do autopsies myself. So if I see the pericardium, I've always taken it away because it's much more beautiful when you take the pericardium away. But Sasha will know that for him as a surgeon, it's absolutely key to know whether something is intrapericardial or extrapericardial. So it is surprising to me that when people are describing these things, they still don't tell us whether it's intrapericardial or extrapericardial.
Indeed. We have one guest, and guys, if you feel like making your questions live, please press the button, raise your hand, so we can promote you as panelists as well, so you can interact with the panel better. So we have Mohammed with us. Mohammed, welcome, and you can make your question and let us know where are you from.
Absolutely. Thanks a lot, Grace. I'm from Egypt. I'm currently in UK. I'm currently doing a fellowship in cardiothoracic surgery, not just in congenital, but I had a background of congenital cardiac surgery back in Egypt and Aswan Heart Center. I'd like to thank Sasha, thank you, thank Dr. Anderson. Thanks a lot for your scientific activities. It was very informative all over that course. I listened to videos by Dr. Anderson, the old videos, the old ones. It was very informative as well, and I knew him from these old videos. So I do appreciate your hard work. And it was actually a surprise for me right now to get me into the panel. I don't have a specific question right now, but I'd like to thank you, all of you, for this hard work. Thanks a lot for this.
Where are you training in United Kingdom, Mohammed?
I am currently in Glasgow.
In Glasgow. In the new hospital. Give your colleagues in Glasgow my very best wishes. They're very good friends of mine. Absolutely. Say hi to Brody for me.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Thanks a lot, Dr. Answer. Thanks a lot for this.
Thank you, Mohammed. Thank you very much. And we have three people willing to make questions. And Darren, do you want to make any questions to the panel? We have Julie Spain, Darrow, and Asma. Any of you wants to make a question to the panel? You click on raise your hands. Okay, while you unmute your mic, I have some questions on the Q&A chat box. So Carlos, who is always with us, thank you, Carlos Troconis, for that. He's asking, is the collateral channel considered, as we call, as an atypical PDA?
It's a very good question. I think that, Sarah, about that, I would be very happy to think of the collateral channel as an atypical duct. And as you say, the collateral channels end up in the duct. I think it's useful to think of it as a duct, is it not? I mean, I've not had the opportunity to study any of these, and it would be very interesting to know whether the collateral channel has comparable structure to the arterial duct. I don't know that at the moment, but I think it's a very good point to make. Sarah, what would you think about that?
So I think there is one paper which says that there was, I think Dr. Edwin also has asked the same question. Do we have any histology of these structures or prostaglandin reactivity? So there is one paper which says that there was prostaglandin reactivity, and we thought that it is by the way of inclusion of arterial ductal tissue in the channel, in the circuit. Histopathologically, I think there is only one confirmation where they said that it looks like arterial duct, but it wasn't very categorical. So I think that question still remains, whether somebody has shown it to be an arterial duct or whether they have shown it a different entity histopathologically.
What you can see from the questions the way the questions are answered is that Sarab is the world authority on the fifth aortic arch, which doesn't exist. So he has the great attribute of being the world authority on something that doesn't exist.
Yeah, that's so interesting.
I think that that's certainly a wonderful attribute, Sarah, to be it's not that it doesn't exist, it exists, it's just how we call it that comes to play. Indeed. And I think so the double-barreled aorta or the double-barreled ductus may take over when we finally get to understand the histology of this area. But I think the most important issue that comes up that has not been discussed is that there was a tremendous amount of information provided in this seminar. And I would just like to emphasize for the Congenital Heart Academy again that these sessions are available for review on the YouTube channel, and that I have spent my time going over each one of these papers again, and have learned a tremendous amount again from looking at them and emphasizing the features and importance of the various aspects of embryology and clinical examination in not only this particular item, but with all of the sessions in the Congenital Heart Academy. And I'm very grateful to Grace for bringing this to my own attention, that all of the examples can be seen in the Congenital Heart Academy YouTube channel.
I mean, in most of them, Sasha has been kind enough to pre-record the sessions. Today, in fact, we did it live. But Sasha, is this one now recorded and available as with all the others?
Yes, yes. First, I would like to thank you, because I think that with this approach in the academy, we are able to discuss with a very rare disease. And also, if we found that doesn't exist, is something new that we are able to share with all the world. And the fact that you can find all the activity on YouTube is, as Norman said, is something that make it amazing. Because this is a real update in 2020, and a lot of people are receiving incredible information about this. I share with Bob one promise that we are going to try to make it a consensus on most of the congenital heart complex classification. And I'm sure that we are the worldwide expert of the fifth doesn't exist arch. So we are now able to say that, you know, most, as a surgeon, as Bob say, it's very important to know what is inside the pericardium and what is outside the pericardium. And as Bob, I learned from Bob that now the radiologist has the opportunity to make it happen, because it's very difficult to learn from heart without life, and it's very easy to learn from new technology, MRI, CT scan. So my suggestion is, Sarab, you have tried to classify the non-classified fifth arch existence. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Grace, do we have any more questions, or have we answered them all?
I think we answered Mo. That's only one thing that Emra wrote. She said, in clinical practice, can a persistent fifth arch be misdiagnosed with an atypical PDA? How should they be distinguished?
I think we are just saying that it doesn't exist. So I think we should be rather looking at these may be all remodeled PDAs in some ways. And I think most of the examples we have tried to say the same, since logically it seems that aortopulmonary communications may be a fifth arch. So that's why we first eliminated the other three groups. We kept only the aortopulmonary group as a possible candidate fifth arch. But as we know, the arterial duct has great amount of remodeling in conditions like VSD pulmonary atresia, and even in conditions like pulmonary atresia with intact septum. So it seems logical to think that that may be a better explanation. And with the upcoming evidence from the developing embryos, it seems like a good idea that we may leave fifth arch behind and think of alternative possibilities.
Perfect.
So if I can mention, Grace, that you've heard today that Sarab's contribution has been spectacular. So next week he's going to join me again. So next week we're going to talk about the sinus venosus defect. And in fact, he's also the world expert on the sinus venosus defect, which does exist. So next week, we hope to clarify for you the morphology and the arrangement of the sinus venosus defect. I noted today that we had a good number of participants who are taking part, but through Zoom. I see we were up to 190. It's encouraging to see so many people, and I understand we have even more through YouTube. So I can guarantee that this has been a great start to the Congenital Heart Academy for 2021. And we're going to work to develop this type of things. As I say, Grace is going to be joining us in the next but one session. Sarab is then going to come back. We're going to talk about totally anomalous systemic venous connection. So we have some exciting stuff coming up. So you should all be telling your colleagues that Congenital Heart Academy is the place to be on Friday afternoons to learn all you need to know about the congenitally malformed heart.
That's it, guys. If you like the format, please tell your team and join us next week. It's going to be really.
Can I ask one question, Grace?
Yes, yes.
I'm always interested to know whether Sarab, who's got this encyclopedic perspective, has noted a incidence of increase of chromosomal anomalies with this particular entity, for example, the 22q11. Have you seen anything along those lines that would lead you to believe that there was, some messaging that went on from the neural crest mesoderm that would illuminate us in this area?
So I think it's not available in all other types except in the ones where the brachiocephalic vessel, like the carotid or the subclavian artery, was the first vessel. If you remember that paper which I showed from Lee, they showed that in the setting, I mean, those all three cases were in the setting of DiGeorge syndrome. So they implicated 22q deletion in cases where the subclavian artery was coming as the first branch. But I think that is again part of the aortic arch anomaly spectrum rather than bringing in fifth arch again. In all others like double barreled aorta, aortopulmonary connections, or other types of so-called fifth arch, there is no mention of genetic abnormalities in the literature.
Mhm.
Okay, excellent. Guys, it was an amazing session. I'm sure this is going to call the attention of our colleagues, and hopefully the knowledge is going